party to two major civil society non-state actor fora, where the collective energies of this dynamic were able to achieve consensus through focus on a common forward-thinking objective. I am certain that this new paradigm, especially for the Caribbean, can be achieved. The first of these was with the 9th meeting of Latin America and the Caribbean Civil Society in relation to the EU. And the second was last week in Brussels with the first non-state actor forum of the ACP, African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. We intend to bring these discussions to the meeting's attention for your consideration. Since the last meeting of the JCC, there are specific issues we wish to bring to the table due to their impact on progress made and our ability to optimize value. These will be structured under the 3 pillars of the social, economic, and environmental framework, which are inherently connected, and in the latter, affected by the changes in the global market. The issue of monitoring and evaluation seems elusive, so it is intended that we make it simple, yet effective. As an example, a look at the trade in goods statistics for 3 years to 2016 between the EU and its Caribbean counterparts shows that the EU imports have been on the decline over the 3 years. And whilst they held steady between 2015 and 2016, they increased over 2014. What is even more impactful is that the gap between imports and exports has widened in favor of EU exporters to the Caribbean. So the net trade balance has been in favor of the EU, 2014 to 2016. Unfortunately, and it is a major concern of mine, but we don't have the trade and services statistics, the usual thing. However, I'm sure that those aren't any better. The response to climate change and the stimulus it has on our region's susceptibility to seasonal weather conditions, and the matter of disaster risk reduction, which I had to say, yes, it is. And I thank you very much. Okay, a few housekeeping little bit of announcements. First of all, when we are speaking, I'd like us to say our name and the name of the organization for the first time. Although we have the name of the organization around, but a name at least for the rapporteur to speak, and then
different sectors. And we are actually in the implementation of a project with the European Union under the 10
Good morning. My name is Natalie Hermanson, and speak a little louder.
You have to put it close.
No, she got close. Good morning.
It's better.
My name is Natalie Hermanson, and I am Vice President of the Association of Industries of Haiti. It is an association that groups several industries from textile to agro-industry.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Kimberly Taylor. I'm from Jamaica. I'm representing the Secretary General, Ambassador Jillian Bristol today. Representing Unique, that's the Association of Caribbean Universities today, and I'm sure it will be fruitful. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. My name is
And good morning. My name is Rolf Phillips. I live in Barbados, and I'm representing the Caribbean Association of Banks, which is the Caribbean region.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kamis, and we're very happy to be here.
Good morning, Medium Enterprises.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rochelle Branford. I'm also representing CAIC.
Good morning. I'm Ralph Wharton from the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions, the regional grouping of financial services cooperatives.
Good morning, Congress of Labor.
Good morning. My name is Ruben McSween. I'm representing the Caribbean Employees Confederation.
Hi, I'm Cleve Scott, and I'm representing the Caribbean Farmers Network.
Good morning. My name is Jocelyn Likwai. I'm from Trinidad, and I represent the Caribbean Network of Fisher Folk Organizations.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yvonne Egal, and I'm representing the Caribbean Network of Services Coalition.
Good morning. My name is Reggie Burke. I'm the coordinator.
The meeting today is really timely. And it follows the meeting that took place last week of the CARIFORUM-EU Parliamentary Committee for the EPA. And the importance of that meeting and also of this meeting is that both meetings will provide input for the discussions that will take place on the 17th of November in Brussels in the ministerial meeting in the TDC. And I think this was a point that was mentioned also by the chair, that it's, I think one of the outcomes of this meeting should be indeed to inform the ministers about the economic partnership agreement, what works, what doesn't work, what you expect to see from it, how you think the countries in the Caribbean can really exploit the agreement. And civil society has a very important role to play in this whole process. And my speech will be precisely about that important role. And perhaps I could start with a quotation by Thomas Jefferson. And he said, "I know of no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society, but the people themselves. If we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but inform their discretion." Citizen education is a core function of civil society. And under the EU-funded Regional Civil Society Project, the Caribbean Policy Development Center is undertaking an online campaign that is targeting vulnerable groups on the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, or the CSME, and the Economic Partnership Agreement. The online campaign seeks to build upon existing efforts at public education and will develop more accessible, relevant, and user-friendly material for vulnerable groups on an ongoing basis that will inform and educate them about regional trade agreements and processes and enhance their ability to take advantage of these. And the ultimate aim is to ensure that all the members of a community are aware of how the ordinary citizen can benefit from complex agreements that sound abstract, but yet have a lot to offer for everyone in concrete terms. And I think this is a challenge that is typical of regional integration processes. And we in the European Union know what we're talking about, because after all, also in Europe, a debate is going on about the benefits of European integration, and it's a very, very difficult debate, because people talk a lot with emotion, and often the ration is forgotten. And I think one of the key challenges is that we inform on a regular basis about what is happening in the integration processes and the benefits that stem from it. But it's even more typical of trade agreements in the current political climate, where the EU might have become a little lonelier these days in defending free trade. But the case for openness remains. There are more and more varied opportunities in open economies than in closed ones. And in general, greater opportunity makes people better off. Ladies and gentlemen, these are also the simple goals of the EPA: to make it easier for people and businesses from both our regions to invest in and trade with each other, to make them better off and spur development. The European Union values civil society as a crucial component of any democratic society, and it partners with the CSOs. And because we believe that our relationship should not only be with governments, but certainly also with the people that they represent. We need your views, and we need your expertise. A genuine democracy is like a three-legged stool. One leg is responsive, accountable government. The second leg is a dynamic, job-creating private sector. And the third leg is a robust and vibrant civil society. And in that role, civil society is not necessarily working against or in competition to the state, but rather supporting and ensuring connectivity, both bottom-up and top-down, between the state and the society it represents. Therefore, governments should view civil society not as a threat, but as an asset. CSOs stand out thanks to their capacity to reach out to, empower, represent, and defend vulnerable and socially excluded groups, and trigger social innovation. Civil society projects have the ability to experiment and move faster than government, and act as an agent of change. Civil society involvement with CARIFORUM dates back to 1973. And a major milestone in this respect is the Regional Strategic Framework, which is a study about civil society in the Caribbean, and that serves as a main basis for our project with CPDC. The CARIFORUM-EU Consultative Committee, for which CPDC also performs a secretariat role, is an attempt to facilitate greater engagement of civil society in the implementation process of the EPA. And it is the only EU or CARIFORUM trade agreement that institutionalizes civil society engagement in such a way. We are proud of these pioneering achievements, but the establishment of a committee or a panel itself and the rules of procedures do not guarantee that it will function effectively. In order to achieve that, first, the work of the consultative committee must be of practical added value to the implementation process. The committee can play three key functions in this respect, and the first is to act as a sounding board. Views expressed by the consultative committee should inform the EPA decision makers about major concerns regarding the implementation of the EPA, who would thus feel the pulse of society. The second possible function is to provide technical support and advice. The range of civil society stakeholders represented in the committee should indeed provide invaluable specific information on various monitoring and implementation aspects of the EPA. And the third function could be public information and relation. Second, the issue of representativeness is a key consideration for the required legitimacy and effective functioning of a participatory civil society mechanism. That is, the degree to which the members genuinely represent the interests of the populations of the CARIFORUM region and the EU who will be affected by the agreement. And we aim for a coalition of partners, which is greater than the sum of its parts. Where civil society utilizes its convening power to bring diverse players on board and creates the context within which good decisions can be made based on mutual trust. As civil society is consistently trusted far more than the government, businesses and the media, at a time when trust is by far the most valuable currency. Third, the capacity of organizations to participate substantively is another important element for an effective consultative committee. Capacity covers several areas: human resources and skills, and the ability to produce relevant research. And the latter is particularly useful because this has proven to be very effective in influencing decisions. Access to financial resources is usually critical for producing research and conducting capacity building exercises. Being able to work within the competition dynamic is fundamental, but it also presents challenges for civil society. Coordinating to achieve results proves to be a challenge for civil society leaders, and resource competition is driving division, just when the sector would benefit from greater cohesion. Fourth, the relationship between the committee and other EPA governance structures is also important to consider, because the consultative committee is not able to make decisions. The work of the committee must be fed into the decision-making process. One's presence in a room with an articulation of views to decision makers is useful, but not sufficient to ensure effective contribution. Not only is it essential for the consultative committee to relate effectively to other EPA governance bodies, but it is equally important to relate to the broader civil society in a transparent manner. Therefore, there is a need for effective structures for the committee to seek input from and communicate its work to the broader civil society. As to us, the role of institutions is always that of facilitating an active participation of citizens in all different forms. And this is where CPDC comes in. But although there are umbrella NGOs like CPDC, trade union and employer organizations in various CARIFORUM states and at the regional level, there is no CARIFORUM-wide body that brings the various sectors together. This may partly explain why CARIFORUM has had difficulties in advancing the process for their side of the consultative committee. The lack of a cross-sectoral consultative structure within the CARIFORUM governance structure results in regional agencies either handpicking persons or asking government departments to do so. However, I don't think we are here to give lessons to our partners, but we want to listen. The EPA is a catalyst for regional integration, and we are offering to share our own experience with that. Not as someone with yet another plan, but as a friend, seeking your ideas and suggestions as to how we can help and become even better partners. The European perspective has always been about bringing regional integration, but we do not wish to impose our agenda. The EPA follows the region's own priorities. The EU will remain a stable, reliable, predictable partner. And I would like to say, a point of reference when it comes to multilateralism, fair trade, human rights and rule of law, economic development and security based on cooperation. This is the way we are working, and I think this is the way you can count on us to continue to work. And we will carry on with empowering civil society. We believe civil society is an indispensable partner for our foreign and cooperation policy. And the EU is determined to continue to be an indispensable partner for strong, resilient, and free societies all around the world. There are new challenges for civil society organizations as they have to find their footing in an increasingly networked global context where younger generations are educated, civically aware, and have high expectations. Online technology, which can connect directly funders and beneficiaries or individuals and causes, cutting out the middleman, can present a significant challenge to traditional business models of civil society organizations. As people connect and mobilize spontaneously, key actors may question why we need institutionalized NGOs. But there are also new opportunities. New information and communication technologies have also opened up spaces of power, influence, and association to new configurations of actors, leading to a significant growth of online civil society activity, giving rise to exciting models for citizen expression, both online and offline, and enabling networks to be built across geographical, social, and physical divides. These networks allow greater numbers of people to aggregate and collectively address societal challenges. And viewed at a global level, civil society is flourishing as a diverse and ever wider system of individuals, communities, and organizations. And in the words of some experts, civil society's time has come. The uniqueness of civil society is making other sectors work, leveraging their capabilities, driving change, and enabling solutions. Seems like a win-win situation for everyone, and yet, not always have such cooperative approaches been benevolent gifts from enlightened managers or politicians. They had to be fought for. But as Margaret Thatcher once said, you do not achieve anything without trouble, ever. Anyway, I wish you fruitful deliberations, and I hope they will contribute to the important debate, not only here, but also in 2 weeks' time, the 17th in November, in Brussels. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, for at least the end of this session. And we will invite a few comments for clarification or contribution at the end of the session as well, for a short bit. And I now want to pass you on to the co-chair, Ms. Brenda King. And again, not too much fuss and so on. Brenda?
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I'm Brenda King. I am with the European Economic and Social Committee. I'm the co-chair, chairing the EU delegation to the CARIFORUM-EU Consultative Committee. And it's good to hear you quoting Margaret Thatcher. It's very rare indeed, even in the UK. But I want to thank you for your speech because it was very specific, and there's some things I want to respond to. Thank you for acknowledging that our meeting is timely. And this is something that we have worked to do with all three of our meetings to make them as timely as possible, and to ensure that we are seen as an asset to the other institutions, the decision makers with regards to EPA implementation. Now, you said that to show added value, we have to be seen as a sounding board. And you mentioned also that we should be able to provide technical support and advice. And I want to say to you, this is something that we are very, very keen to do. And so you said that, you mentioned that Margaret Thatcher quote, about, the trouble. So I'm going to move into a very sensitive area here. I want to express my disappointment that there's no one from CARICOM or CARIFORUM here. This is an issue that we have had even with the decision makers within the CARIFORUM Secretariat. You mentioned that we have to have a better relationship with the other institutions, and I want to reinforce that that is very, very important. When we have these meetings, it's always a struggle. And I will say to you that the reason that the consultative committee is here today is because of the civil society, and not just on the EU side, but on the CARIFORUM side. Because once we made links with the Caribbean Congress of Labor and the Caribbean Employers Confederation, we formed a network and we pushed hard to have this committee going. Because you made a statement about hand-picking individuals, etc., but that's not the case. Everyone here, and I think you heard everyone introduce themselves, are here because they represent a constituency within the CARIFORUM area. And we are here because those constituencies, once they realized that they had this institution for us, we worked hard for it to happen. And it took 5 years for us to have our first meeting because we had to push for it. It was not given to us. So that's the first thing to say. So I know that we would have arrived once, when we have these meetings, especially in the Caribbean, that we have representatives here from the other key CARIFORUM institutions. Now, so now on to quickly what the CARIFORUM co-chair wanted me to say. So he said he wanted me to talk about some of the progress we have made since the last meeting we had, which was in April 2016. Actually, looking at Pascal, there's one other thing I should mention, and this is the point where you said about being able to give technical support and advice. Now, I was at the meeting of the parliamentarians last week, and as you know, Ambassador, a key component of that meeting, a big part of that meeting, was talking about services and how to make that part of the EPA, how to realize that. And in this room, you see that we have the representatives from the EU side on services, but we also have the representative on the CARIFORUM side in terms of services. And they will have a body of knowledge that can help to move this area forward. And so this is something that I'd like you to take back. I will certainly be taking that back. This is something I'd like you to take back, that they need to include the expertise that exists within the region. Because your point is right, that civil society is very important. You mentioned areas in terms of helping vulnerable groups and with human rights, and you're absolutely right, that is very important. But we can also contribute significantly on the economic pillar of the EPA, as well as the social. So now on to what we have delivered. since the meeting in April. When we met in Brussels in April, we had already delivered a major piece because we did something. We had our meeting, but in that meeting, part of that meeting, a session of our meeting was in the European Parliament with Dr. Schuster, because as you know, Dr. Schuster, he's looking at EPA for SADC, the Southern African states. So we had a meeting because Dr. Schuster is very keen that the EPA with SADC should include an element of parliamentarian as well as civil society oversight, and it doesn't exist in the EPA at the moment. So he has been using this committee as a template that can be used with the SADC EPA. So we had a session with him where we fed back some of our experiences in some of our experience of being involved in an EPA, which we think others can learn from and build on. So following that meeting, we know that there was a conference. There have been a series of meetings in Brussels on what we can do to have civil society oversight involved in the monitoring of that EPA in SADC. And this formulated in a meeting just last month where I think at the initiative of Dr. Schuster, we had the Trade Commissioner. She had a meeting in Southern Africa with civil society there to see what can be done. I couldn't attend, so I'm going to ask Raphael to just give a short feedback on what happened on that.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. My name is Raphael Bellon, and I'm working at the Secretariat of the European Economic and Social Council. So I'm not a part of the consultative committee, but I'm here providing some support to EU members, to ESC members, which are part of the EU consultative committee. And just to complete on what Brenda was saying, there was indeed a couple of weeks ago a high-level event in the Southern Africa Development Community led by the EU Trade Commissioner Malmström to try to build some momentum on trying to set up some kind of platform to allow for civil society monitoring and participation of the EPA. And the CARIFORUM Consultative Committee was presented as one of the possible templates to establish such platform. So to that event, there were 3 members of the European Economic and Social Committee that participated, 1 member from the business representatives, another one from the trade unions, and the third one from the various interest groups. So, at some point, the members of the ESC delegation, they explained a little bit what structures existed in trade-related agreements that the EU has signed with third countries or regions. And one of the representatives explained a little bit how the things are working with the CARIFORUM, no? So you have actually EPAs where there are 2 different domestic advisory groups, call it like that, where each side members meet on their own, and then they have joint meetings once a year, or you have structures like the CARIFORUM, where you have already a joint consultative committee, who is expected to meet at least once a year, with rotating structures. When it comes to the Secretariat, last year the Secretariat was on the EU side, this year is on the Caribbean side, rotating also presidencies, and so on and so forth. No, one of the messages that was passed, and also Brenda commented on that, and that's something that this committee has made clear in all the conclusions and declarations that have been adopted at the end of the meetings, is the lack of permanent resources that should be put, at the disposal of the members. Let me just read you the recommendations that were adopted in the last year meeting. One of the conclusions was, the consultative committee urges the parties to allocate and disperse the necessary budget for its functioning. This budget should be linked to an agreed work plan, and you will discuss about that later on, and vested in their respective rotating secretariats. Okay, so because that's a problem of a functioning problem, a logistical problems that becomes recurrent when it comes to the daily work. So just to conclude, the CARIFORUM was presented as one possible template for the establishment of a similar structure with the SADC development community. Okay, with the EPA, with the SADC. Okay, now this means from the EU side there was a very clear interest to set up that platform, but now there has to be an agreement, of course, with the counterpart. And at this time, the SADC structures, they are discussing whether and how they should engage into this civil society monitoring. So this is just not something that was explained there and then it was going to be adopted. So there will be further discussions on what platform or what mechanism will be put in place to ensure civil society participation in this EPA. Okay, thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much for that, Raphael. So following on from what Raphael has just said, so that's one component. The other component, of course, the outputs from our meeting has to feed into the Trade and Development Committee and the Joint Council. And at the last meeting, we agreed our rules of procedure, but they have to be ratified by the Council. And since our meeting last April, the Council is going to meet on the 17th of November this year. So I'm assuming that we will get our rules of procedure ratified so then that we can move forward with them. We also presented our communique and the rules of procedure to the Trade and Development Committee, which was held in Jamaica in November 2016. Now, unfortunately, the then co-chair, I think, just had 10 days notice of this meeting, so couldn't attend. However, we were represented by Miss Lydia Rose, because she's based in Jamaica, so she presented both our declaration and the rules of procedure to the Trade and Development Committee meeting. So I think those are the key things that I want to feed back about what has happened between April, since our second meeting, and this next meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay. I want to invite you to present any queries you have, any comments, concerns, clarification needed, just for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we have a break, and then we come back and dig into our work. The floor is open.
Good morning.
Could I also have the mic person come and just check me a minute?
Good morning. In order to benefit from Your Excellency's time here this morning, I wondered whether you can tell us what you're specifically doing at the level of the delegation here in Trinidad, and also perhaps how you're also coordinating with other EU delegations in the region on issues of implementation of the EPA, and if you already have current projects undergoing, or if you have some foreseen between now and 2020. Thank you.
At the level of Trinidad and Tobago, we are trying to work with the government. And when I say we, it is not just the EU delegation, but also the member states of the European Union that are represented here in the country, to strengthen the trade relations. So we have regular discussions with the European Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago and some of the other business organizations that are active in the country, looking at the business climate, engaging in dialogue with the Ministry of Trade to explore opportunities for investments. Again, also raising at times issues where we think there may be some hindrances to promoting trade or to promoting investments, and to see whether through those discussions we can create to a better investment and a better business climate. So that is in terms of the policy dialogue and the relations. Then in addition, we have been providing development cooperation assistance to Trinidad and Tobago over the past 41 years. The last years, it was primarily focused on supporting the country in the diversification of the economy. Trinidad and Tobago decided to move out of the sugar sector. Accompanying funds were made available to assist the country with moving into other economic areas. And that was complemented by a budget support program that promoted the competitiveness of the business sector. And currently we are discussing with the authorities how we can help with the diversification agenda, but from an innovation perspective. The government is, I think the cabinet has recently adopted a new innovation policy, and they had asked our support financially to implement part of that policy. So in the process of drawing up a program for 8 million euros that will probably focus on two subsectors of the economy. One is agriculture, looking at promoting value change and particularly how innovation can play a role, but also looking at renewable energy and energy efficiency. And then we are also working with civil society organizations. We have launched a call for proposals, and at the moment my team is evaluating proposals for civil society organizations that want to be active in the area of the environment, but also that are active in the area of the business climate, and promoting their capacity to do advocacy work, engage in dialogue with the authorities. That's 900,000 euros that is available for those activities. So when I say we promote working with civil society, we actively and effectively do that. And again, that it's complementary to the activities we want to do with the government in supporting the private sector. At regional level, there's a regional indicative program worth 346 million euros, which is co-managed by the CARIFORUM Directorate at the CARICOM Secretariat and our delegation in Barbados. So those are the two organizations that are involved in discussions on how those funds can be utilized. The three pillars in the regional program. One is focusing on the citizen security. And again, that has an impact on the business climate. I've heard leading economists here in Trinidad and Tobago mention several times that the level of criminality is a hindrance to economic investment, so it's vital also for the economy. Second pillar is climate change and renewable energy. And the third pillar, in fact it's the first pillar, is regional economic integration, trade and implementation of the EPA. And I think for this third component, I think 106 million is set aside, and that includes support for the private sector, support for looking at the legislative and regulatory framework. So it's a holistic package that is available. So Barbados and CARIFORUM Directorate are developing the programs, but they interact clearly also with the countries concerned. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, it's the Ministry of Foreign and CARIFORUM Affairs that's responsible for the relationships, but they work very closely also with the Ministry of Planning. And we talk a lot also with our delegations through the Caribbean. So we try to make sure we have a comprehensive package, that we're all working on the same initiatives.
I was looking at the countries who have ratified the EPA to date, and I see that Trinidad and Tobago is one who has not ratified as yet. Do you know the reason why? And the reason why I ask is that many EU meetings happen here in Trinidad, and the Trinidad Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as you mentioned, is very active when it comes to facilitating these EPA events. So I was just a bit curious.
Well, to be honest, I don't know why it has not been ratified. It's true also for the Paris Agreement, for that matter. So maybe it's got something to do with the capacity of the government to try and translate or to move from signed agreements to ratified agreements, because it involves Parliament. It's a lengthy process. I mean, I'm just speculating. I don't know whether there's any other specific reason. But it's true that certainly the Ministry of Trade, the Minister of Trade, are very active in promoting the EPA. The government has recently launched a trade facilitation strategy. So for all intents and purposes, they're very much behind the concept and the process. But I don't know exactly why ratification did not happen yet.
Thank you. Pascal?
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. I wanted to come back on the issue on services, because taking the example of this region for the SADC region is nice, but they have not negotiated anything on services. So I think this region is really specific in terms of the content of the agreement. And this is true for the EU, that we have 73–75% of our GDP into services, but it is also true for this region. The largest part of the economy is into services. And that would actually deserve to have a specific attention. And I understand that there are discussions to eventually ask for a specific committee. We can come back at the later on this topic. But everything on the work of this region should be focused on services. And all the programs that you are mentioning, there is nothing on services. It's nice to put money on things which are important part of the economy, but the largest part seems to be absent. So I think if there is a possibility to look whether it is possible, first of all, to help the bodies to calculate trade in services in the region. And Dave, I'm not sure that if we would have the figure, it would be the same thing for goods. I'm deeply persuaded that you are a big exporter of services through tourism, and that is in the growing. So it would be important, but we cannot just guess. We need support to get some data, and it is extremely complicated. I am, for the last 15 years, pushing Eurostat to get better figures in Europe about trade in services, and I know it is very complicated. But because it is complicated, we need some support. So that is what I wanted to say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. Flavia.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to bring up the point about the importance of monitoring and evaluation of the EPA. And I want to acknowledge and show great appreciation for the work that the EU is doing here in Trinidad and in the region. And to ask a specific question, to what extent more resources can be put into monitoring and evaluating of the EPA, especially as a region we have fully institutionalized it. Because I think that would give us a better sense of to what extent some of the challenges that we are having in the services sector and in some of the export sectors, and it would give us a better opportunity to have timelines in terms of dealing with it. Thanks.
Thank you. You need to state your name for the records, please. Reminder.
My question is linked to the problem of
name, please. Sorry.
Sorry, my name is Dav-Ernan Kowlessar from representing European Trade Union Confederation. I would like to make a remark on monitoring, which is later on the agenda, but it's perhaps a point that I just was wondering. Sorry. I can speak louder if this is. Okay. Is this better? Is okay? Okay. Yes. I would like to make a remark on monitoring, which is apparently difficult. But the remark was made that we should monitoring on core performance indicators for human development, economic development. We have Western countries or developed or advanced economies have a very powerful monitoring institution which is called the OECD. And there are countries in the region which are actually trying to have access, which will get access to the OECD, like Colombia. It's in the final stage. I was just wondering, it's a question for the ambassador, are there countries in the region who are trying to apply for membership, because this will be very stimulating? I suppose for some countries in the region it would be very difficult because they have a long development process before them, but some more, I don't know the region, I must say, so I don't know. I won't name countries, this is the best I suppose, but this would be a powerful instrument for monitoring, because then you have a monitoring institute that is there, that has all his methods, his quality as well, and it would be good that, because there are international institutions like IMF and World Bank who are doing monitoring, who are giving advice, but for trade unions this is always difficult, as everybody knows. So the OECD is a more reliable partner, I think, and this could be an idea, but perhaps utopic, I don't know. Perhaps the ambassador can give notes.
To be honest, I don't know whether there are any countries in the region that have applied for OECD membership. But I think that the OECD does record or collect data and presents data of cooperation from OECD members with other countries. So if there are activities that are funded by OECD members with the Caribbean countries, that is probably, you can probably trace that on the OECD website. Maybe perhaps also mentioning something on the focus on services, and you know the point you made that all the programs are mentioned do not mention services. The reality is that we work on the basis of strategies that are developed by the beneficiary countries and the region. So they determine their agenda. They identify in which areas they would like to receive support. Now, if you listen to the Minister of Trade, there's a big discussion going on here in Trinidad and Tobago about diversifying the economy. Although services are mentioned broadly, when you start talking about sectors, it's agriculture, it's renewable energy, it's the yachting sector, it's port development. So about port development perhaps is services. So there you are. Yeah. ICT is mentioned. ICT is mentioned as well. It's one of the areas in the innovation policy. But they did ask specifically to focus on agriculture and renewable energy, which, by the way, are also sectors that, from a policy perspective, from the EU point of view, are worth supporting. So we have no objection going that direction. So, but that is a bit the rationale. But I take your point that if services are so important. Clearly, the country should and the region should focus on that as well. Resources for monitoring and evaluation, and linked also with the OECD membership, because it's about having access or collecting data and having access to data. It is vital, because if you don't know, if you don't have any data, if you don't know what your starting point is, if you don't have any baselines, it's very difficult to define targets. And if you don't set targets, you don't know to what extent the policies that you're implementing or the activities you are supporting financially are effectively successful. So it is vital. When we develop programs, we try to ensure that monitoring and evaluation are built into the program. But I think you're looking at a wider form of monitoring and evaluation, and perhaps that's something I understand you're going to discuss that over the coming 2 days. So where you perhaps may want to make recommendations to CARIFORUM and to the EU. But I agree with you, it is very important.
Thank you, Ambassador. Okay, Joy, and then I'd want to come in to wrap up because we're approaching 10:50.
Justin, hear me? All right. I just wanted to indicate, I didn't see it in the agenda, and I'm not sure if the ambassador could speak towards it. It's with regards to the Brit exit. Just wanted to find out if it is that you'll be able to talk about any status of it. The reason why I'm asking about it is because many of our members tend to export to the Britain because of the West Indian population. And of course, as what is taking place internationally with regards to Britain coming out of the EU, yes, they are aware that there are other markets in the EU, but of course they've also been looking towards more of UK. So I just wanted to find out if it is that you have any status with regards to what is taking place, and if there's any, if our role could play in terms of, what strategy we could look at in terms of addressing that area, or at least, following what is taking place with regards to that. Also, I just wanted to state, I know that Ms. King had asked about some of the reasons why Trinidad and Tobago has not ratified the agreement. What I could tell you, just very briefly, I know that there are one or two issues with regards to the preferential listing of goods in the agreement, and there's issues with regards to that. That is one of the major reasons, right? That is, they have not been able to rectify, right?
Brexit. Well, we all know the negotiations are ongoing in Europe, and I think until they are done, I don't think we know exactly what will come out of it. And I think what will be of importance is what type of trade arrangement there will be between Britain and the EU. I think, in a sense, also for third countries. We don't know. What we do know is that there is an economic partnership agreement that is in place, and that even when Britain leaves, that EPA remains in place. There will still be an agreement with 27 EU member states with a market of 450 million people. So I think the Caribbean countries, can still try and exploit the opportunities that exist in penetrating that market of 450 million people. So that is a choice you have. Then how the relationship with Britain is going to be after, for the Caribbean countries, I don't know. That is something that will have to be discussed between the countries and Britain.
Okay, is this directly related? Because we've got to wrap up, and keep it short, please. Thank you.
I suppose Britain has separately signed the EPA, so as long as they don't formally get out of the EPA, they will be in, I suppose, judicially spoken, because they signed and ratified it separately. So I'm not a jurist, but I suppose they have all interest to be in most of trade agreements that are there in the EU, and they will try to to stay in it as they have ratified it separately. But it's a judicial point, and I'm not a jurist. So,
just to follow up on what the ambassador said, I totally agree that there's the opportunity with the 27 other member states. I remember having a meeting with the head of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, because you know Britain has brought in this tax. When people fly over to the Caribbean, they pay this, they pay this extra tax, etc. And I remember the frustration. I had suggested that they do what the India and China had did and look to have a hub on the continent, because China and India have a hub in Frankfurt, so they got around it. So there are opportunities. But separate to that, the UK government has made it very clear that they want to deepen their relationship with the Caribbean. And at the parliamentary meeting, the British ambassador has said that they plan to keep the size of their development funding for the Caribbean, even though it will be separate from the EU. So I don't know what will happen in practice, but what they're saying is that with regards to the Caribbean, because of the historical links, that they're looking to continue or even deepen that relationship. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Just before we close, and Ambassador, thank you for your comments. They fall in line with the thrust of our meeting today. Looking at the agenda last week for the Parliamentary Assembly, I always get this wrong, but the CARIFORUM-EU Parliamentary Assembly, I did not see the CARIFORUM-EU Joint Consultative Committee at all being asked to present or to at least even be involved. Having said that, and having been giving ourselves advice on what is our role and how can we be effective, first of all, do you know why we were not specifically on the agenda? Because I even saw that 2 or 3 Trinidad and Tobago BSOs were on the agenda, well, one state agency, and the CARIFORUM Consultative Committee was not there in any sense at all. So I just wonder, how can we make ourselves and how can we be of value to the overall governance structure? Hope you understand my question.
Well, I think the challenge for you is to make sure that your voice is heard. And indeed, if there was no invitation for civil society to participate in that meeting, I think you should talk to the CARIFORUM Directorate and perhaps also speak to the European Parliament, because they were the 2 organizing bodies of the meeting. I attended, but as an observer, more than anything else, it was really organized between the two parliaments. Well, CARIFORUM Directorate, and the EU Parliament. So you would have to lean on those institutions to make sure that you are informed on time whenever there are relevant meetings that are taking place.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. To clarify, on the EU side, we are always invited to the EU meetings in Brussels of the EU delegation in preparation for this meeting. And then I was invited as an observer to the meeting here last week. And so, yes, it's odd that, the EU invites its side, but the CARIFORUM doesn't invite there, especially as the co-chair is Trinidadian. So, it would involve very little cost. But this is something that we will definitely raise in our communique, and we hope we have your support, as diplomatically as possible to mention this every opportunity you get. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I won't belay the point anymore, but I'm going to make sure it's on record. So thank you all. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you to the team at the head table. Thank you for listening to us. I hope we've got the message clear. And we are going to break for 8.5 minutes because we have used some